Welcome or welcome back to my channel, friends. I hope you've had a fantastic start of the year. If you're new here, I have gone through a journey of discovery, healing, and I want to talk about how I went from burnt out and uninspired to finally living my dream soft life. As always, I will share everything that I can and put sections so that you can go straight to that part if you prefer to just dive into a specific topic. But this is gonna be a long one, so grab yourself a drink and let's dive in. Firstly, I want to acknowledge my privilege in saying that I have decided to change my lifestyle. It is not lost on me that it's something that not everyone can do, but I'm hoping that sharing the things that I am doing and the little tiny habits that I'm implementing on this journey will be able to help all of you if you're also wanting to follow suit and start living a softer life. Unfortunately, in today's society, we seem to think that looking after our well-being and slowing down, it's something that only a few people can afford. But when you look at it, the cost of chronic stress and not being well can be so debilitating and can actually be more counterproductive than deciding to slow down and finding a different way to live. But let's start from the beginning. And for me, the beginning was also the end, because it was the end of a big chapter, as I have shared in some videos, and I'll link them down below if you haven't seen those. But it was a very big realization for me to understand that actually the corporate environment was not something that was healthy for me to operate in. This comes down to so many different aspects, from the more practical kind of demands of a 9 to 5, where the word said it itself, you have to be in an office most of the time between 9 and 5, which obviously requires a commute. You also have to operate at a certain level and kind of adjust your entire life around that schedule. I do think, and I want to say, that this is a way that works for many people, and I have friends that are thriving in their 9 to 5s, and I'm absolutely cheering them on. But I wish that I had been told that there are other ways to live your life, to work, to contribute to society, and to support yourself that are not that. I grew up in an environment where the corporate life was the biggest aspiration that you could possibly have. None of my family member had a corporate job. I didn't have it modeled to me. So when I finally got there, and when I finally realized that this is such a dream and I have accomplished it, it was a really hard moment to accept that it was not something that was suitable to me and my needs. I felt like I was weak, I felt like I hadn't done it right, or maybe I wasn't putting enough effort, and I really fought against the feeling of this isn't for me. I didn't want to accept that that was what it was and that there was nothing wrong with it. I really was trying to figure out a way to talk myself out of leaving that environment and finding a way to actually stick it out, find a way to make it work, stop moaning, stop thinking that there is something bigger out there. I was so sure that I shouldn't trust myself that I basically ignored the signs for too long. And that's what led me to burning out. If I had to tell you what happened when I burnt out, it was honestly so heartbreaking to think back at that time, because I really chose to ignore the symptoms, and I threw everything that I could into romanticizing that life that I had, because it had been a dream for so long. I used to work in publishing, if you're not familiar with my career, and it is a dream job for many, and it was the dream job for me, and in a way it still is, and we'll talk about it probably in another video. But that format was so toxic to me. It had nothing to do with where I was working, and mostly to do with things outside of my control. So ignoring all of those signs, I led myself to really debilitating burnout, which actually had me out of work for months. This was terrifying. I could barely pick up anything. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out of bed. And later on, with therapy and support, I have come to find out that yes, it was burnout, but it was also leaning into depression, and I had let it go way too far. I'm not saying this to scare anyone, and I hope that you never have to experience this, but I am mentioning it because a lot of the time it's very confusing to understand what this big word that is burnout is, and I just wanted to highlight that it is a bit different for everyone. And I think sometimes we forget that mental health doesn't come with instructions. It's not like we just know that it's simply burnout or it's simply depression or it's simply anxiety. There's so many elements at play. But overall, what I understood after that was that I was deeply unhappy and things were not working in the way that I was hoping for, and I needed to stop forcing it. The realization that I had to change things was so obvious. There wasn't even a realization to begin with. I couldn't work. I couldn't go back to work. So the months that came after that were confusing for me because I realized that I had to find a way to support myself financially without being able to do that kind of job. And bear in mind that that kind of job was the job that I had prepared to do and did for nearly a decade. So I knew that unfortunately I wasn't going to be able to go back to physical labor, and I knew that I needed flexibility. There's so many other elements around this, which were finding out about my chronic illness, coming to terms with that, and realizing that the change that I was looking to make was bigger than just the job. And the decision was in a way made for me. I never had to be brave and leave the 9 to 5. I never had to take a chance on me. The decision was made the day that I got a call whilst I was still pretty ill, and I was told that the team that I was working in was gonna close down. To me, that felt like a blessing. That's not to say that the end of that chapter was an easy one to deal with, but it felt like a blessing because I knew that I couldn't go on like that for much longer anyway. So when that chapter closed, I was excited to finally get into building a life that worked for me. But what I didn't realize is that everything that I was thinking about when changing this lifestyle was focused around work. I was so obsessed with work and so stressed out about money and so just attached to the idea of being able to prove myself, being able to be worthy in whatever way I could find, that when other events unfolded, I just felt like everything was breaking around me and I just didn't know where to go. I truly believe that all of the events that happened after I left my corporate job were just another example of how I truly needed to look at everything and my life holistically, as opposed to just thinking that a change in career would then bring me a change of lifestyle in a way. And that's not to say that you have to change your entire life, but I went from being very sick, in debilitating burnout and depression, to be made redundant, to lose my house and then not have a stable home for 7 months. And it took me all of that to finally realize something is wrong. Something is not aligned, something is not right. And me clinging to this idea and identity of myself that no longer exists is going to continue to hurt me. And I think that's kind of what it was. It was this need of feeling like I belonged somewhere. This need of feeling like I wanted to be that version of myself that I had worked so hard to get to. I had this idea growing up that by the time I hit 30, I would be a girl boss doing like a really cool job in a publishing house and being married with kids, and you know, let's talk about that in another video. But it was all of these like artificially imposed milestones that I had put in my head that I was clinging so hard on, because in my head, being that and achieving those things was the true mark of success. So the moment that everything went up in smoke, and the moment that I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that there was none of that in my life, that I was 31 years old, I was completely and utterly broken. I was completely and utterly broke too. None of the work that I had like put so much effort in had come to fruition in the way that I thought it would. It was that moment that made me realize that working hard doesn't necessarily guarantee success, and that success can be redefined at any point in life. And as I'm saying this to you, this is a big realization that I feel like a lot of people go through, especially in transitioning times, like end of your 20s into your 30s. A lot of things just shatter around you, and a lot of the time I was looking around me at the things that broke, thinking, gosh, this is a mess. this is a mess. What I wasn't seeing is this little like glimpse of lights and rainbows that were shining into this like shattered glass all over me. That's what I should have like paid attention to. When something breaks, it can be fixed sometimes, but other times you just have to move on and you have to just let go. And it's hard to know when to do what, and like hard to know what's the right choice for you. But with a little bit of introspection, you can get to the point where you understand whether something is worth you fighting for, or whether it's broken because it was just never meant to be for you anyway. And this is where I got to terms with the fact that my life had to change. My life was changing already, so whether I liked it or not, I needed to find a new way to live it. And I had this opportunity of making it whatever I wanted to. And as someone that grew up in an immigrant household, who's a first generation immigrant herself, and who's always seen work in function of money and always seen the idea of life as a struggle as the norm, this for me was an opportunity that I was so grateful to have, because I finally just got to stop and think, well, I've lost everything. I've lost everything. And I did all of the right things, but I still lost everything. So surely those beliefs are not correct. And being able to understand that really helped me to just take a moment for myself and think, okay, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? How do I want to do it? What do I want my life to look like? If there is no limits, if there is no money worries, if there is no problems with my health, what do I want my life to be like? Because the one thing that I realize is there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. You can readjust your dream, you can like tone it down a little bit if you have to, and you can insert all of the context and the piece of the puzzle later on to make sure that your dream is achievable. But dreaming big is important, because what you don't want to do is end up with a subpar version of what you dreamed your life to be just because you didn't dare dream big enough. Dreaming is free, we should do it more. And so when I let myself dream, and when I started leaning into what my heart truly desired, the biggest word that came up in my mind was I wanted life to be soft. I wanted to not be in a constant state of struggle. I wanted to create something for myself that I had never seen anyone around me create. There's something that happens when you grow up looking at people who have struggled a lot in their lives, whether it's your parents or the people that you grew up around. It influences you and your way of looking at the world. If you don't have something modeled to you, chances are that a lot of the time you're not gonna think that that's possible for you. And that's what happened to me. I didn't think that living a soft life was possible. I thought that an easy, soft, quiet, gentle existence was reserved for people who were extremely rich. I thought that I could never be that rich. And I'm sharing this with you because I think there is a lot to say about doing the work and really just breaking down those limiting beliefs that you grew up with. I did not come to all of these realizations on my own. I'm very grateful to have been able to do some therapy, and it was specific therapy to help me work through my trauma and also to help me work on my self-esteem and self-concept. What became evident when I went through all of these changes was how little I allowed myself to be and how little I truly valued myself. I valued my work a lot, I valued my achievements a lot, but I didn't value me. I linked my self-worth to work. My identity was completely mashed with work. So I was one with my job. When my job started to be shaky, when things change in the world and we started to look at different things, because I do think that there has been a massive shift in the last few years, I then started to feel lost and confused and like I wasn't really as happy as I thought I would be. And so here comes my decision to embrace a soft life. When I talk about soft life and when I talk about embracing a softer existence, I refer to an existence that it's not based on struggle, that invites ease and calm and rest, but also comfort, luxury, dreaming. I want to create a life, and I am creating a life that helps me to feel my best, that helps me to help the people that I want to support in my life and my family and friends, and also a life that is full of enjoyment. You can probably tell from the way that I'm talking about this that this is going to be very different for me, for you, for anyone else. So there is no one definition of it. There is no one way to do this, much like there is no one way to do anything. If you think about other philosophies, there's minimalists and there's slow living, and there's lots of different ways of doing each of those things. Everyone has to find a way that works for them. But for the sake of sharing it with you, that's what I'm gonna be calling it. So this year is the year that I share with you this journey. And it's already started. I have already built a pretty soft life, but there's lots of elements that I am gonna be working on this year that I'm hoping I'll be able to share with you. I truly believe that we have been conditioned to think that there is only one way to do things, and there's only one way to be successful. There's only one way of feeling like your life is being productive and worthy and all of that. Sadly, the people that are gonna feel this way and that they're gonna feel the pressure to prove themselves are also the people that need the rest, the relaxation, the slowing down the most. I have mentioned briefly about my chronic illness, and that has been something that honestly was just as a wake-up call as it was losing my job. They had nothing to do with each other, and yet one was so intrinsically linked to the other that when it came to decide what my life was gonna look like, I really had to keep into consideration both. The first steps that I took to create a soft life were very simple. Initially, I really truly needed to look into what I wanted, what I desired, and what I needed, and take steps towards building that, and kind of trust that those steps were going to lead me where it needed to. Things like understanding who I am, understanding what I like. It's very basic stuff, and it felt like being a child again in a way, because I hadn't had that opportunity growing up. I had to be a certain way to survive. And so getting out of the survival mode and giving myself the chance to really just explore and play and understand the things that I love and the things that I am good at, that was truly the first step. I realized I am a huge introvert. I understood of myself that I am actually someone who values very, very close connections, but doesn't need thousands of people around her. I love privacy, but I'm also enamored with stories and the powers that they hold. I love staying at home, and I love being cozy. I love moving my body in a very mindful and intentional way. I'm not really someone that enjoys high intensity workouts. But that doesn't mean I'm not a sportsy person. There were so many elements that I went through in this kind of self-discovery journey that really helped me to feel like I was almost coming home to myself. That was the first step, and it's a very, very important and essential step. And if you want me to, I can talk a little bit more about the details of how I went about it, because I literally did take it very seriously, and I did some specific things to be able to understand myself and like explore this relationship with myself. Once I did that, I had a pretty good idea of who I was, and therefore what I would enjoy, what I would want my life to look like. So the next step for me was figuring out and trialing a way to make that work in this day and age, and to actually see what I could achieve just being myself, not having to adapt to an environment that was toxic to me, not having to push myself to the point of being unwell, just doing what I felt like I could do and navigating the world in that way. This took a bit of adjustment, and it took some help. It was scary, and it's still something that I'm trying to figure out, but it helped me to figure out things like what type of work did I want to do, what kind of routine did I want to have, what kind of way of living was I trying to build, and where did I see myself going forward in the near future. This step truly helped me figuring out my business as well, and how I wanted to approach earning money. There was another layer that immediately came after this that was all around my relationship with money and work, and how I had to work to understand my blocks, my beliefs, and also my fears around both of those big topics. And then the third step was to actually stick with it. So once I figured out who I was, and once I figured out what kind of life I wanted to have, I had to just keep going. It felt a little bit odd at times. I really judged myself. There was a lot of judgment, feeling as if I wasn't working hard enough, feeling as if I was maybe making a big mistake, and maybe I didn't truly want this. It was as if my old self was still somewhere in my head telling me,
no, you should wake up early, you should go to that event, you should message this person, you should apply to that job.
Because that's what that part of me was comfortable with, and that's what worked up until a point. So I had to really stick with my initial vision. I had to be so confident, and I had to be so disciplined in shutting out those little voices in my head and just keep going with resting, keep going with letting myself come back to life and trusting myself that was the right path for me. And since doing all of that, I have been so happy. It's been a testament in the power of mindset and the power of trusting the process. But I genuinely feel like I have achieved what I wanted to achieve. And today I am living a soft life. So I've decided I'm gonna share this journey with you. I will share the successes that I've had so far, what worked for me, and what has truly helped me to build a soft life. Since I have started this journey, I've been able to take moments of rest and to look after my well-being, both mentally and physically. And for me, that is the biggest thing. There's also been some exciting news, which you might have noticed if you follow me on any other platforms. And I do think that is one of those signs that things are going in the right direction. Leaning more into my feminine side, really relaxing and accepting what I want without letting myself be conditioned by all of the noise and all of the things that there is out there on social media in regards to what you should have and what you should be and the things that you should become and should do was the biggest thing. Letting go of all of that and truly trusting that what I desire is right for me, and that I shouldn't worry about what anyone thinks of me and whether anyone agrees or doesn't agree with the way that I want to live my life. Because at the end of the day, it's my life. I want to invite you to do the same. Whether you think that you need a big change in your life or not, whether you want to go towards building a soft life or a different kind of lifestyle, my biggest advice to you is to shut down the noise and really look in and just think about what you want. Think about what you need. Think about who you want to be. And don't worry about what people think or whether they think you're gonna be able to do it, whether they think that you're going to be as cool or as successful. Redefine what it means to be happy for you, what it means to be successful to you. Take back your life and live it the way you want, because we only get one. And if there is one thing that you invest your time and energy this year, let it be your well-being. You are never going to regret looking after yourself. Never, ever. Everything else comes and goes, but your well-being, your health, both mentally and physically, is truly the most important thing. So make sure you look after it and make sure you do what you have to feel happy and joyful and well. If you've got this far, thank you for sticking around and for being on this journey with me. Let me know if you've got any questions or if there is anything that I can share with you that might help you in your journey. And remember, you deserve to be happy. See you next time.